In this lab video, I will be demonstrating exercise 5.2, testing administrative accounts, exercise 5.3, configuring groups and permissions, and exercise 5.4, using DS-add to add a user account. In exercise 5.2, we'll be testing the accounts that we created in exercise 5.1. The first one we're going to test the DOM admin account on server 01. We're going to see if we can create a site. So we go to the Active Directory Sites and Services MMC. In order to create a site, we right-click on Sites and click New Site. We're just going to call this one DOM for the account that we're on. As you can see, we are able to create the site. So we're going to log off. Now we're going to try the Enterprise admin account that we created, still on server 01. Same process, we're going to go to the Active Directory Sites and Services, INTC snapping. We're going to right-click on Sites and click New Site. We'll call this one ENT for Enterprise. As you can see, we are able to create the site there as well. Likewise, we're going to log on to the Schema admin user account. Then go to the Active Directory Sites and Services, INTC snapping. We're going to click OK. If we right-click on Sites, you'll see that there is no option to add a new site. That's because the only permission given on the Schema account is to modify the schema. And the reason why the first two accounts, the Domain Administrator and the Enterprise Administrator accounts, were able to create the site successfully is because they have the proper permissions to do that. The Domain Administrator account has full access over the domain, and the Enterprise Administrator account has full control of all domains in the forest. So now we're going to move on over to server 02, and we're going to do the same exact test that we did before. So we're going to start on our Domain Administrator account. We're going to try to create a site. As you can see, we are unable to create a site on server 02 on our Domain Administrator account for the child domain. So I'm going to log in and try the Enterprise account on our child domain. Again, we right-click on Sites and click New Site, and as you can see, we are able to. Again, we'll call this something simple, ENT. Now we'll log into our Schema account to test whether or not we can create a site. Of course, the Active Directory Sites and Services snap in. And as you can see, we're not given an option to create a site here. That's because on the Schema Administrator account, the only permission that we are given is to modify the schema. The reason why the Enterprise Administrator account worked is because we have the Enterprise Administrator account has full control of all domains in the forest. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to determine which accounts can create users. So notice that we're logged on to server 01 as the Domain Administrator account. If we right-click on Users and click New and click User, you can see that we are able to create a user account. That's because that, again, we have full control of the domain. This is one of the permissions that we are granted as a domain administrator. We'll just delete that because we don't need it anymore. So now we're going to go back to our Active Directory users and computer snap-in and see if we can remotely add a user to the child domain. To do that, we right-click on Active Directory users and computers and click Change Domain. And we're going to type child02 in. As you can see, same exact process, right-click. As you can see, we're not able to create a user account on our child domain. So now we're going to log into our Enterprise Administrator account. In the same exact process, we're going to try to create a user. We're going to name this one ENT. So if we expand this tree and right-click on Users and click New, you will see that we are able to create an account. This is simply because, as an Enterprise Administrator, we have full control over all domains in the forest. So now we're going to change domains to our child domain. You'll notice that we are also able to create a user account in this one for the same exact reason that we were able to create a user account on the domain01.local. We have full control over all domains in the forest, not just our parent domain. So we'll delete those accounts since we're not going to use them anymore. And we'll change over to the schema administrator account. So if we try to create an account, a user account, you'll see that we are unable to do so for one reason. The reason is because this is the schema administrator account. The only thing we're allowed to do is modify the schema. If we change domains to child02, same exact reason. So now we switch servers. We're on server 02 now under the domain administrator account. And we'll right click on users, go new and user, and the reason why we are able to create a user account on the domain administrator account is because that is one of the permissions that we are given. Now if we change domains to our parent domain, you'll see that we are not able to create a user account on this one, which is because we don't have the permission to, because we are logged in as a domain administrator, as in the administrator of the child02 domain. So now we're going to try to create a user account on the enterprise administrator account. So we're going to user in computers snap in. We're going to right click on users and click new. Click user. As you see, we are able to create an account on the enterprise administrator account. That's because we have full control over all domains in the forest. So we're going to change over to our domain 1.local account domain. You can see we are also able to create a user account, on this domain. That's because we have full control. But if we go to our schema administrator account and try to create a user account, you will see that we are not able to create a user. Again, this is because that the only permission that we are given as a schema administrator is to modify the schema. And you'll see this again as we switch over to our parent domain. Again, there's no option. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to determine which accounts can manage the schema. So right now we're logged in under the domain administrator under server 1. So first we're going to do is we're going to key in MMC and we're going to set up our schema snap-in. So we'll click schema and we'll click add. We'll click OK. As you can see, now we have access to the Active Directory schema, and we're going to drill down. If we click on attribute, we can see the attributes, but if we right click, well, you'll notice that the create attribute is grayed out. That means that we don't have the proper permissions to create an attribute or modify the schema. So now in order to make testing the other two accounts easier, we're going to save this under the C drive as C:\schema. Now I'm going to close out of this, log out, and log back in under the schema administrator account, still all on the same computer. So this time we're going to type in C:\\, and you can see your schema right there. So we're going to click that. We're going to enter our password, which is our standard MS Press number 1. You'll notice this time if we right click on attribute, you see that we are given the option to create an attribute. That's because as a schema administrator, we do have the permission to modify the schema. So before we switch servers, we're going to test the enterprise administrator account to see whether it can modify the schema or not. So again, we're going to C:\\, and we're going to click schema, click continue. You notice if we right click on attribute, we are not given the option to create an attribute because we do not have the permission to modify the schema. Now we moved over to server 02. We are logged in under the domain administrator account. We're going to add the Active Directory schema snap-in. and save it just like we did last time, C:\schema. We're going to drill down, we're going to right click on attributes and notice that it's grayed out. This is because we don't have the permission to modify the schema. So now we're going to log out and log back in as a schema administrator account on server 02. So we're going to do C:\schema. It's going to ask us for our password again. As you can see, if we right click on create attribute, we are given the option to create the attribute because we have the modify schema permission. We do the same exact thing on the enterprise administrator account, C:\\, we're going to click schema. And again, if you'll notice that we cannot create an attribute, which is grayed out, which is because we do not have the permission to modify the schema. In exercise 3.5, we will be configuring groups and permissions. So right now, we're logged on as an administrator account on server 01. We're going to go to the Active Directory Users and Computers snap-in. Here we're going to create a group. I'm going to call this group LAdmin01. Since 01 is the odd computer, that's the one we're on right now. Click OK. Then we do the same exact thing on the even computer, again logged in as the administrator. This group is going to be called LAdmins02 for the odd computer. And notice we just created the global groups. Now we're going to go back and create universal groups. Again, we're back on server 01. And we're going to call this LAdmins. And we're going to make sure that the group scope is universal. And group type can remain security. So now what we're going to do is we're going to right click on LAdmins and go to properties. We're going to go to the members tab. We're going to click add. We're going to add LAdmin01, the global group that we just configured, as well as the LAdmin02. In order to add LAdmin02, we have to change our location. So as you can see, we're going to click location, drill down the menu there, click on our child domain. We're going to click users. And now we'll be able to type in LAdmins02 and it will add to the group successfully. So now we're going to click on the member of tab, and now we're going to add this group to the member of the administrators. And we're going to add it to the member of the administrators for our child domain too, which also means we're again going to have to change our location. So I'm going to select the domain and click administrators. So what this is doing is the universal group, which has the global groups in it, is now an administrator. So we're going to create two test accounts. We're going to call this one local admin01. We're going to give it the standard MS Press number 1 password. And we're going to make this one a group, or we're going to make this user a member of the LAdmin01 group. So now we're going to go over to server 02 and do the same exact thing. We're going to create a user account called local admin02. And we're going to add this one to the LAdmin02 group. Now we're going to log off and log on to each computer with a newly created account. So we're going to start with server 01 under the local admin 01. We're just going to test a couple things. So as you can see, we are able to shut down the server. If we weren't, that option would be grayed out. And if we go over to our Active Directory users and computers snap-in, you'll see that we are able to create a user account. If we weren't, that option wouldn't even be there. And if you also look, we are able to change the time of the server. These are just a few of the basic administrative tasks that you would be able to do on a server. We're going to do the same test on the the even computer with the local admin 02. As you can see, we are able to shut down the computer. We are also able to change the time. In exercise 5.4, we'll be using dsadd to add a user account. This is a command line utility, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an OU, so it's going to be dsadd OU. And you'll see that as soon as we press enter, we are given the dsadd succeeded message saying that the group was successfully added. Now we're going to add a user to the computer using the dsadd user command. You can see we're also given a dsadd succeeded message saying that the user was successfully added. And just to verify, we're going to go over to the Active Directory users and computers. As you can see, there's our OU that we created as well as a username. So we're going to do the same thing on server 02, except we're going to call the OU service and the username AJ. Again, command line utility. We use dsadd OU. Again, we have the successful message, and then dsadd user. And again, the successful message. Then we're going to go over to Active Directory users and computers snap-in. As you see, there's our service OU as well as the AJ username. This is the end of my lab video for Lab 5 in INTC 2050. See you next time.